Yeah, hi, good morning. Kelvin MacKenzie on a momentous 24 hours in our political life as we trade in one socialist half-wit for another one. A man who, his first act, well, in fact, he says two things, which I found, two things and hinted to a third, which I think is even more dangerous. Number one, he says, right, we're going to cut the 5% VAT on electricity bills, which is always attractive, but I literally didn't know that this was such a small amount, and therefore I don't care about 40 odd quid. I just don't care about it, right? It's a knife to have. If I did care about it, I would be far more aggravated at having to pay £180 to watch bloody television in this country, which is, if he really wanted to be helpful to us, actually, he'd scrap the license fee, actually make it subscription. The BBC would still exist, but I'd be £180 better off because I wouldn't then renew a subscription. So if he really cared about me, if he really cared about ordinary people, he'd save ourselves 180 quid, not £45 by scrapping the VAT on electricity bills. And as helpfully one of the guys who got booted out by Burnham yesterday has already pointed out, it's unfunded. So it's another debt. I think it's 1.8 billion, another debt on the top. We're already paying 100 billion a year to people we don't know who have the choice of foreclosing on us at any moment. Would you like to have a large debt, which somebody knocks on the door and says, do you know what? We actually don't like you. We can get better interest rates somewhere else. We think your country is on the path to going bust. In fact, William Hague wrote a piece in the Times today saying that unless something changed, we are on the way to actually being bankrupt. In fact, things have got so bad here, we're going to have to shut the show and head out the door because there's a fire burning. What the government are doing is they are now currently burning our money. The next thing will be burning books. So the first thing they do is they announce that we are going to scrap the VAT on electricity, and that's money we haven't got. The next thing that they're planning to do, clearly, and there's no, raise the alarm, thanks, I like that one. The next thing they're going to do, which is, I find absolutely perilous, is they're going to, in some way and in some rather odd idea, are going to try and freeze rents. Now, the bottom line on that is that nowhere in the world has it worked. And if they want to see it not working, they don't have to look very far, but they need to go to Jokistan. Just go to Scotland, where they've just tried doing this, and the effect was that rents went through the roof because two things happened. One, the number of people in the landlord business in Scotland then got out of the landlord business, simply flogged their houses. I don't want, nor does anybody want, the government controlling what I do with my money and how and where I place my money. So what happened? In Scotland, rents up. Immediately a rent freeze is announced, rents go up. The other thing that happens is that you're not allowed to increase your rents as a landlord under this law. So immediately somebody moves out. The rents then go through the roof in order to recoup the money which you've been denied by the government. So that's not going to work. Number three, we now have, as our foreign secretary, well, we have two things. As our deputy prime minister, we have a convicted fraudster, right? And she said it was a mistake. I saw her actually being interviewed in the most patsies of interviews on Newsnight last night, in which she says that it was an error. Well, of course it was an error, but it was quite a cunning error. She thought about it, and of course, being a socialist, stealing or actually purloining the company's phone was obviously in her DNA. And then she is concerned that, and socialists are concerned that she will be described as a convicted fraudster going forward. Yeah, she will be. I can't see it sustaining. How on earth? A quite serious case, this. Yeah, it did happen 13 years ago, and she's a different person now. Yeah. She says she won't be stealing any more company phones. Well, that's a good thing to hear, right? I can't see her not always being described by, for instance, stations like this, and also, Daily Mail and everything. I don't know how that is sustainable when you're Deputy Prime Minister. I suppose if you're a Labour MP, I imagine it's perfectly all right. So the other aspect of this government, which I find impossible to deal with, is that Miliband is going to take over as Foreign Secretary. Now, as Foreign Secretary, you don't do anything, right? And this is where I admire Yvette Cooper by moving to health, because at least you'll do something. We're not a big country. It doesn't matter what the Foreign Secretary thinks or says. It can be unhelpful, but it can't be helpful. He's got no muscle. There's no way. So Yvette Cooper was Foreign Secretary. Who cares, right? Who cares? In fact, things were so bad, David Cameron was Foreign Secretary for about 20 minutes. Who cares? Nobody cares. We're a little old country. I see the Foreign Secretary of the UK's turned up. Really? How amazing. How interesting that he would spare time to come and see us. Poor old Germany, France, Italy. Doesn't matter. So Yvette Cooper to be praised for taking what looks on the outside like a demotion. Actually, she can actually do something now, and that when she makes a call, somebody returns it. But this guy Miliband, he hates Trump. Now that is an issue. So those things, we have an interview with that well-known. I noticed he was talking about the truth in this interview, but between Alistair Campbell and Miliband, which is a really interesting aspect of political life. Somebody like Alistair Campbell sitting with the old sexed up, definitely 175 people sent to their deaths, right, can sit there and talk about the truth. Give us a break, Alistair. I know things are desperate because you need the money to pay your son's legal bills, but please, just for a second, let's try it. Anyway, Miliband drops a huge tubload of manure all over Trump, which of course, actually, when this took place, this interview, I think 2018, 2019, probably didn't matter. He was so far out of office, you couldn't reach him with a large piece of rope. Didn't matter. Life being life. 6-7 years later, he's the Foreign Secretary. Hi, Donald. It's Ed here. Is that the Ed who described me as a bloody conniving, lying, woman-hating, misogynistic, untruthful kind of person? Because if it is, you can shove this call up your arse. That would be my reaction. Now, it may be that Donald Trump actually doesn't deal with foreign secretaries from the UK, which is probably would be a more intelligent probably reaction. But so you've got a Trump hater at the foreign secretary. You've got some kind of mad lefty, come out of the northwest and finally found his way down to London. And he's going to spend half his time in the north and half his time in the south. It's all performative nonsense. At the end of the day, we are a bankrupt nation. We need to do something about the economy. And the economy involves one important thing. Clever people working hard. Have we got clever people? And if we have clever people, are they prepared to do the 7-day week? Forget about work-life balances. Anybody who runs any business at any time, and especially small businesses, there's no such thing. The kids, they just have to get on with it, right? Your job, man or woman, is to work hard and bring food to the table. It's as simple as that. If we don't have that, we don't have a country. Literally, our debts are out of control. We don't seem to be making enough money. And now we've got somebody who their first single action is an unfunded offering of 45 quid to me. Think about it. Scrap the BBC licence fee, you get 180 quid. There's loads of people who want your hand in television, including people like UK Live, who would do it for nothing, right? Okay. That's the beginning of a rant. This will be available in 3 parts later during the day. Mike.
Morning.
Morning, matey. I can't imagine that your large breakfast time audience Mike has an audience larger on YouTube than any other breakfast show of its kind, which is quite amazing, really, considering the show has only been going a matter of months. Are they pleased to see this change at number 10?
No, nobody's buying it. They think it's, well, because effectively what we've got is a guy coming into power who says, you know, those people that you elected 2 years ago, they were all rubbish, right? So we get rid of all of them. Yeah. David Lammy, Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, you know, senior politicians running the country, been running it into the ground, absolutely useless. Don't worry, we've got another plan. And we have some more people for you, some of whom were in the original plan, but who got fired for various reasons and are now coming back. Like the convicted criminal, as I like to call her, Louise Haigh, who, believe it or not, in her capacity as Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, is now going to be in charge of propriety and ethics in government, right? So, I mean, that's one of her first ports of call. So she will have to investigate.
Do you know what? I've got an idea for that.
Go on.
Perhaps one of the aspects that she should do is create a defence for socialist criminals.
Yeah.
Right. So that when they appear in court, because they're socialists and can't afford decent barristers to defend them, then the government send them these lies, which she said work quite well for me, but you'd like to tailor it. So kind of an AI version of...
The thing I object to mostly about her is not that she was a fraudster, but that she was so bad at it, that she actually reported the stolen phone on the stolen phone. So she used the stolen phone to report it stolen. And I mean, that's a special level of idiocy.
Well, but that's what gets you promoted.
In the Labour government.
In the Labour government, yeah. I mean, she could have just been Education Secretary or something like this, but there was a special form of stupidity which said, honestly, Lou, you are heading right to the top. Yeah,
absolutely. So they're basically not buying this idea that suddenly, you know, King Andy of North is going to come in and he's going to give us all hope in our hearts, you know, and we're all going to feel a lot better about everything. And that's going to, and in addition to that, we're all going to be 90 pence a week better off because he's given us 45 quid back in the old no VAT on your electricity bill. 90p a week.
Okay, so there's one other thing. I listened this morning, I think it was on the Today programme, to an interview.
You've got to stop listening to that rubbish, by the way.
I know I've got to stop listening to it, but you know, as distinct from you see, I have got the milk of human kindness in me. No, there were people out there who believe that. No, but seriously, and I listened to the Citizens Advice Bureau chief, right, a dame somebody. She was saying that what was necessary was two things. One, that energy bills for the skinned and are built up to the point where the average is around 10 grand. And she said that's got to be scrapped, i.e. the energy companies have got to take that on the chin. And the other thing was that they said that housing benefit have been frozen effectively or been fixed at 2023 levels. And that is 17% less than the rents of today. Well, the reason for that is that the landlords, instead of if you were looking for a flat today, it is damn difficult to find one.
I was with somebody yesterday who's actually showing flats to people for rent, and it's a massively busy market apparently.
Yes, huge. People are desperate for it. But she said you've got to put up housing benefit by 17%, which have got tens of billions. These people will get preferment in the corridors of power under the Burnham plan. So Burnham's plan is to squeeze out the Greens out of the Labour vote. That's what it's about. So these bribes will continue. So at what point does they come round to you, Mike, and they say, Mike, we've had a look at your money. You seem to be doing okay. I'm afraid, Mike, you have got to pay much more money. Much more tax.
I mean, it's already the case, I think, that those of us who do reasonably well are paying more than 50% tax. You know, in whichever way you want to add it up. You know, and there's talk they could push it to 60. I mean, it becomes ridiculous. You know, I think I just have to leave and go and, you know, work.
Well, I'll tell you what you could do. This wouldn't be helpful to the company. But why don't you go to the Isle of Man and broadcast from there?
Well, I could do that, or Guernsey or something like that.
And just set up a business. They're very pleased to have business people, as distinct from people who are just trying to escape, some taxation.
Yeah, right.
What you're saying is, I want to go somewhere where when I wake up every morning, I don't find I have a government who are actually trying to work out how to take every penny off me to fund people who I'm not minding doing my bit.
Yeah.
I don't want to do my bit plus just because life, either I've been lucky or for whatever reason.
Well, it's effectively like what I say to people is it's effectively like going out for dinner with your family and you're paying for somebody else's dinner over there as well. So you pay for yours, but then you've got to pay for theirs too. And it's like, well, what's the point of that? What's the point of going out?
Yeah, yes. Look, so we're all agreed there are people out there who need help.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not sure Pooch agrees with that, but they can get on with it.
He's one of them.
When he needs... well, actually,
there's a different kind of help. I'm going to regret saying that.
Yeah, no. Hold on a second. We've got coming on somebody quite smart in a minute, so we're going to raise the quality of
That's a very good idea.
This debate.
Very good idea.
I just wonder whether Pooch might lie down on that couch over there just for a few hours. That might be helpful. So next year we're sitting there having this discussion. Where would you? He denies. Burnham denies he's going to put up tax rates to 50%, but he's obviously got he's got his eyes on some other interesting ideas.
Well, I mean, he hasn't given any indication other than that he wants extremely left-wing people in Downing Street. He's hired Alison Phillips, who you might remember was one of the worst newspaper editors in modern history.
Well, what was it?
She was editor of the Mirror for a while.
What's she going to do there?
She's gone in as some kind of director of strategy or something.
No.
But having come via the Mirror, via Hope Not Hate, that dreadful organisation.
Right. So there's another Hope Not Hate.
Yeah, there is
Matthew.
What's his part? Matthew's not Matthew McConaughey, but it's Matthew something or other. Who's also from Hope Not Hate, who's gone in as a sort of a chief of digital something or other. Hatred. So,
Digital hatred.
Digital hatred. There you go. Yeah. So all the people that he seems to want to bring in are from that side of the fence.
So if you're in the free speech business, right, which is
these
basically
people are not your friends.
What this shows.
These people are not your friends. If you are.
So you're in the free speech business. You're even in the media, in the old-fashioned media or whatever media. You think that there'll be a full-scale comms bill which will design to curb your ability to say stuff?
Absolutely. There will be, yeah.
Right, well, that will be a very serious moment for this country.
And it will have to be fought tooth and nail by people like us and them, to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, that I find because Hope Not Hate hadn't really got any success, and actually, what happened with Prince Harry? In fact, we got a great guest coming on with a lot more brains than perhaps the combo of Mike Graham
I can vouch for that,
the international tap dancer Kelvin MacKenzie. He'll deal with the terrible blow that Elton John and all these, and then Elton John's partner also claimed. They obviously thought that this was a great gravy train, that they were all going to make it. And Doreen Lawrence, I love that, right?
Yeah.
So she was much loved. People felt desperately sorry for her. Then suddenly all started coming out. There was the story of the ex-husband who said, "I don't even know where my son's body is buried, and this is down to Dame Lawrence." And then, of course, she gets caught up in there. And old Harry says, "Don't worry about this, Doreen. I'll pick the bill up. There'll be a few bob in."
Well, do you know who's played a blinder in all this? Is old David Sherborne, the lawyer. Who's gone? Yeah, it's definitely. Come along. You, Elton. Come in as well. Hugh Grant. Come on.
Don't sing any songs.
Don't settle. Just we'll take it the full length. We're going to get all the money. We're going to clean up, and he's getting 500 quid every 15 minutes or something. So incredible.
No, he's done great. He's now got a house probably as big as Harry's.
Yeah.
Right. That was the whole object.
He's about to buy an island down in the Maldives somewhere.
Right. Okay.
Anyway.
Right. Thank you very much indeed for sparing the time to come in. I love having a chat. But look, I've got a much more interesting person than me, and I know that's a very low bar. Coming up in a second. After the news, let me introduce you to this guy. He's got brains to spare. So if you're short of any, Rafe can help you. Okay. Cheers.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes. The Knob of the North met with King Charles and was formally appointed. In his first speech outside 10 Downing Street, he pledged to end years of instability, deliver the biggest changes in the last 40 years, bring back hope, and focus on stable, responsible politics with a left-leaning agenda emphasizing working people, regeneration, and a circuit breaker moment for the country. What a load of bollocks. He quickly unveiled a new cabinet with a clear shift. John Healey as Chancellor, David Miliband as Foreign Secretary, Angela Rayner returning to Housing, Shabana Mahmood staying as Home Secretary, Wes Streeting as Defence Secretary, and Yvette Cooper in Health. Reports describe a purge of some Starmer allies, signalling a more leftward direction. Other headlines include the charging of a 28-year-old man, Joshua Kerry, with the murder of former MP Anne Widdecombe in what police called a targeted attack. Additional stories cover Kevin Keegan's death at 75, various crimes and incidents, and international notes like Ryanair's profit warnings amid global tensions. This rapid leadership transition highlights ongoing volatility in UK politics. Latest Tigers.
Yeah, hi, Kelvin MacKenzie back here again. I was going to remember who this was. Rafe has a huge brain, which is matched only by the length of his name, right? So his IQ and his name are kind of merged together. So it's Rafe Heidel Manku, okay? The thing about Rafe is he's a number of things, apart from being a jolly good guy. He has an intellect, and we're short of that at the moment, to be honest, Rafe. Expert in sort of constitutional areas. But I want you to, if you could talk today about the transfer of power and what, and from your perspective, should we be pleased about that we actually we are in a democracy where there isn't a riot on the streets? Or should we say it's too easy with somebody now not being held to account over anything? He turns up and he's got his piece of paper and that's what's going to be the government. Whereas at least before we had a sighting shot, even although he ditched it straight away, we had a sighting shot from Starmer saying, this is what we're going to do. This bloke sits there, makes it up and says, that's the policy.
Yeah, no, I understand those arguments, and certainly it's frustrating to see so many different people become prime ministers, clearly with different agendas than the ones that the original government was elected on. But at the same time, I would say, from my perspective, this is the reason that Britain has the world's most stable democracy. We are the world's oldest and longest and most stable constitutional democracy. And it's because we aren't rushing off to have elections every time there's a change of leadership in part. Just think, we'd be on our 7th general election now. Yeah. And think of the turmoil the country would have to be in if just 2 years later we're forced back to the polls again. The reality is we don't elect the Prime Minister, we elect your MP. Mm-hmm. And whichever party has the most MPs, they form the government. So they can have a shuffling of deck chairs on the top of the party as to who runs it, but actually it's those MPs who can command the confidence of the House. And that's why I think we have a stable form of government. We can change leadership, but it doesn't need to derail the entire operation of government. But you would hope that they would be duty-bound to obey the manifesto pledges which the government was elected on. Now, there's no constitutional requirement for a government to abide by its manifesto pledges. The House of Lords has to respect manifesto pledges. So if the House of Commons passes something which was a manifesto pledge, something called the Salisbury Convention, the House of Lords can't really obstruct that, but they can obstruct anything else. So, for example, the Assisted Dying Bill was a private member's bill. The House of Lords blocked it. If it had been a manifesto pledge and the government had put it forward, it would have been a lot more difficult for them to do that. But yeah, so look, we had this wonderful demonstration of our great constitution on Monday, where we had Keir Starmer leaving to number 10 for the last time as Prime Minister. He went to Buckingham Palace to see the King, and the moment he offered the King his resignation, at that moment he stopped being Prime Minister. And that's very important, because what it shows to the Prime Minister and the government is that, yes, you may wield power, but ultimate power is possessed by the Crown on behalf of the people. So as soon as you lose that democratic consent, as soon as you don't get the confidence of the House of Commons, the King can remove the power from you and give it to a person who does command the respects of the House of Commons, who of course are our elected representatives. And that's a very important check in a democracy on the power of government. It's a sober reminder to our politicians that they aren't all powerful, and actually they held power at the consent of the people.
Okay, but you raised an interesting point there, which I to be honest, had passed over me. But there'll be a number of points in this discussion which pass over me. I didn't realise that if the Parliament tries to push through a bill which wasn't in the manifesto, then the Lords can correctly stand up and reject it. Okay, there's going to be a whole load of things. Now, this is a man who turns up with his own script. Right? Nobody knows what he's thinking, except he suddenly decided, actually, I'm going to squeeze the Greens out by going further left so that you don't have to go to the Greens. Okay? There could be a whole series of bills trying to go through the Lords, which are held up or, changed in some important way. They pushed through 17, I think, new peers the other day. I think all but 2 of them could basically vote Labour, I think, one way or the other. Could it be that they're defeated in the Lords on a kind of almost everyday basis?
Yes, well, they can be frustrated in the Lords. The Lords can try to talk bills out, so they run out of parliamentary time. They can send bills back, but they can't ultimately completely frustrate government in the Commons, because they are the elected chamber. We have a complementary rather than a competitive system. The House of Lords is a house of sober second thought. They're there to review legislation, correct things with all the experience that they have, and say, look, this is okay, but you need to improve this because there are these dangerous things that could happen if your legislation goes through. And ultimately, of course, Parliament in the Commons can enforce the Parliament Act and force something through eventually.
Do you think you're going to see a lot of that?
But I think you're going to see potentially. Well, the other problem, of course, is that Tony Blair and David Cameron appointed more nobles than Louis XIV. they crammed the House of Lords, so there are so many Labour peers there. You just need to keep appointing more Labour peers to ensure you have people on your side. That's why the House of Lords is broken. It's not fit for purpose. I did a lovely paper with Sir Roger Scruton a few years ago, 2010, on how we need to reform the House of Lords, because it's just full of cronies at the moment, and its real value was in the experience that it had for the best people in business, science, technology, education, the arts, sports. Those are the people you want in the House of Lords, not former social workers from Southwark who've now become peers in order to basically increase Labour's vote.
Right, well, that's a good point. So could you see a Burnham character saying, I'm sick and tired of being frustrated by these people. We are going to change this once and for all. We are going to scrap the House of Lords and replace it by some other independent chamber.
Well, it's been tried so many times. It's been going on since 1911, Lloyd George started it, and the Lords has proved to be the most intractable problem. I regret the loss of the hereditary peers. I once spoke to a Conservative leader of the Lords, and she said, I will apply a 3-line whip. A whip is when you get a 3-line whip, you have to obey the government if you're a party member. She said, I would do it all the time to the life peers. I would never apply a 3-line whip to a hereditary peer, because they had the long-term interests of the country at heart. They didn't care about party politics. And I think that was the value of the Lords. They didn't feel compelled to act against their conscience.
Right, okay. So here we are today. We've got a new government. It's going to last potentially 3 years. Do you think it'll last 3 years?
I think it's a case of turkeys voting for Christmas. I don't think they've got enough of a majority in the House of Commons that there's no reason that they would want to sacrifice their pension and their salary. So it's going to be 3 years, and we may actually look back to Keir Starmer as something of a golden age among Labour governments, given that Andy Burnham is not only to the left of Keir Starmer, but he wants to bring back the Green Party votes, and also, of course, there's the desire to ensure that the Muslim vote is coming back, because there's a big schism now, of course, in the Muslim population between the older Muslims who are still with the Labour Party, as they have been for decades. That's one of the reasons you had the Labour Party turning a blind eye to the Muslim rape gangs in the north of England. The idea was, of course, they would say to people, look, we are the only people who can form a government, either us or the Tories. Only we can look after your interests. We will protect you. We'll pass an Islamophobia blasphemy law. We'll turn a blind eye to the rape gangs. We'll try to suppress any national inquiry as long as we can secure your vote. That's been going on for years. There's been vote harvesting by the Labour Party in the north of England, which not enough people talk about. Postal votes are harvested in their thousands, which are basically just signed and are filled in by community leaders for the Labour Party. We're back to the 19th century rotten boroughs in the north of England. So you've got this very cosy relationship between Muslim community leaders and the Labour Party. But what's happened now is you've got the more radicalised Muslim youth, who are far more radical than their parents or grandparents, I always like to cite the stat that 1/3 of young Muslims, 16 to 24, believe you should be put to death for apostasy. Far higher than it is amongst older generations. Apostasy is leaving the faith, for example. And they basically were the ones who were going after the Muslim vote. If you remember at the last election, there was a big talk about independent Muslim MPs. Let's have our own Muslim candidates in power.
Yeah.
And what they realized, though, that there weren't enough Muslims on the ground yet demographically to elect that many Muslim vote MPs. So what they've now just realized and decided is we need to ally with the white population to get our people into power. And they looked around and they thought, the Green Party will be the vehicle. They will be the Trojan horse to ensure we can get our more radical Muslim chaps into positions of power. Mm-hmm. And of course it's working. And why the Green Party haven't cottoned onto this, it's the age-old story. A party led by a gay Jew, you would have thought might perhaps cause some issues morally to radical Islamists, but they don't care about that. The Soviet Union had a name for these useful idiots. Polenzi Duraki, they called them, the well-meaning lefties that they could take advantage of. Yeah. And it's exactly the same thing. We saw it in Iran in 1979 when the Ayatollah allied with the students. We're seeing it now with the Green Party, and that's why you have, for example, an Islamic conservative running Brighton, which has got the biggest gay population in Europe, and somehow no one seems to think this is at all peculiar in any way. So Andy Burnham needs to win back that Muslim vote, many of whom left because of Keir Starmer's initial statements and policies after October the 7th.
Yes, I did see that Burnham was indicating that there had been some mistakes made. And the main mistake, it seemed to me, was that he seemed to have lost a load of votes.
Yes, exactly.
That's what he viewed as a mistake, rather than just saying, well, actually, Israel was under fire, they fought back, and these are Islamists running Gaza. They don't care about their people. They don't care about their buildings, right? They're going to fight until the last drop of their Islamic blood, their anti-Jew blood. And yet nobody ever says anything decent about the Jews now. What is wrong with our country that we think, if it was any other minority, if it was a sexual minority, like the trans, right? I don't know whether there's 250,000 trans in this country, but every government says something nice about them, and we should do this and we should do that, and judges are getting involved. But there's 250,000 Jews in our country, and everyone says, well, basically, mate, you're on your own.
Yeah, well, there are only two groups against whom one can be racist today. That's Jews and white people. And of course, we should celebrate the Jewish community. I've actually said, given the size of their population, their contribution to Western civilization is without. There are three groups I've always said: Jews, the Scottish, and homosexual men. Those three groups have outperformed the size of the population. I don't know whether we protect the Scots. We protect the gays, but we don't seem to protect the Jews as much as we certainly should. Yeah. Just have to look at the number of Nobel Prize winners in the Middle East, and they're all concentrated in one very small area. So we lose them at our peril, and they are always the canary in the coal mine as for how our country is going. But of course, at the end of the day, for political parties like the Labour Party, it's a pure question of numbers. It's votes. And the fact that you've appointed Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary, who of course is toothless, as you said earlier, but this was a man who of course steadfastly opposed Israel consistently, also blocked America's desire to use our American bases. He was one of the main movers about that. He was also the chap who stopped Cameron bombing Syria, delayed that by 5 years, which led to a huge number of deaths.
Shock of that.
And that, of course, because that was an exercise of the royal prerogative. Cameron could have just basically done it if he wanted to, but Miliband made this a House of Commons issue, and because the Commons defeated that bombing, America and Obama said, well, if we don't have Britain alongside, so there were a huge number of lives lost because of Ed Miliband's interference.
And they were dropping literally acid, effectively, onto their own people. And then when he saw that the UK and the US weren't going to do anything about it, Assad then said, right, well, you can have this for another few years as well.
Yeah. Then Putin came in. Putin saw America and Britain not doing anything, saw the decline of Western power, and got himself involved in the Middle East. And also and then you had the Wagner, the mercenary groups coming in. So Russia basically was able to exert huge influence in the area. And it was like the butterfly effect, and you can trace a lot of this back to Ed Miliband ultimately.
So you're looking at a government now of a completely different kind of vibe than the previous lot, right? The previous lot, I don't know who they were, We never really got to find out who Starmer was. He didn't want you to know who he was. We had Rachel Reeves, who seemed to be saying to people who didn't treat her with enough respect, don't you know who I am? I mean, she's a chancellor. Why did she have to try and impress anybody? I mean, it seemed bizarre. Now we have a completely different lot. But the interesting thing this time is that they have fired. There are a number of people feeling very, very angry, wandering around the Labour benches, right? 1 minute they had the car, the money. I'm being interviewed by the FT, really, right? And now they're just sitting there hoping to God that the whole thing falls flat in its face. Now, even this morning, the first thing one of the fired guys says, that was unfunded when he talked about it. This is the first time I have seen a purge. I think the headline writers got that right. A purge of an entire groupage or thought process. I would have thought that was quite dangerous because they're going to have to, it's not they've got the votes, yeah, they have the votes, they don't have to worry about that, but they do have to worry that there's going to be backseat drivers, right, pointing out.
Oh, yeah.
And that will be enough because you expect the Tories to say it, you expect Reform to say it, you don't expect a former cabinet minister to say it.
Yes, well, this is the thing. Well, the left have always been very good at purges. Historically, you just have to look at the Soviet Union to see how good they are at purges there. And the audacity of spokesmen like Jonathan Reynolds on the Today programme and others to say, oh, well, now we're bringing the parties together. This is the end of factionalism. I'm sorry, you've started on day one with the Knights of the Long Knives. Yeah. And you've beheaded 3 of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. David Mastermind Lammy, Calamity Lammy's gone. Yeah. Rachel from Customer Complaints is gone. And loathsome Lord Hermer, the man who hates Britain more than the Ayatollah, he's gone as well. It's only Ed Miliband, unfortunately, who remains. Yeah. And those 3 are on the warpath, along with Darryl Jones and all the rest of it. Yeah. So yes, you're going to see the sort of briefing that you had under Keir Starmer's advisor. What was his name? Matthew... what was the name of the chap who was his right-hand man, his advisor to Keir Starmer? McSweeney.
Morgan.
Morgan McSweeney was accused of briefing on his colleagues. Well, you're going to be seeing the same sort of briefing because all of the secrets are still known by Lammy and by Reeves and everybody else. And if they have an axe to grind, they will be quite happy to divulge what they know.
I read both Lammy and Reeves were saying that their job had been the privilege of their lives. Honestly, if I read one more statement from anybody, at least when I get fired from any job, which seems to come around at fairly regular intervals, right, I never bother to say that it's been the privilege of my life, mainly because it normally only lasted about half an hour. I was telling somebody yesterday that I was fired from the Telegraph without writing one article. right.
Your reputation precedes you.
Yeah, well, I was announced joining the Telegraph. Kelvin MacKenzie, tabloid tosspot, and all the rest of it. Right. Anyway, the colleagues at the Telegraph said, "Is he joining us?" And they then put a petition together and went to the editor and said, "I'm sorry about this, mate. If you're hiring him, we're leaving." He said, "I'm terribly sorry, Kel, you've got to go." I said, I haven't even written anything yet. He said, "No, but thanks anyway." And I was fired, which must be some kind of miracle. So you're looking at these people. They're quite powerful in the sense you are the former Chancellor. They can't take that away from you. So how on earth are they going to keep her on side when they carry out things of which she is clearly not going to approve because she wouldn't have done it, right? You're right, she got things wrong in other areas, but she's a former Chancellor. It does matter what she says.
Yes, and we know that she's overly emotional as well, so she's more prone to have an outburst.
No, that would be great. What do you mean if she started literally weeping? She's read something. She's read something that the current Chancellor says, and the next shot of her is like
the
that.
Lips quivering and all we go.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and also I think I was wondering whether she was being taunted by Burnham because she was the only person of the 3 beheaded horsemen of the apocalypse. She was the only one to be offered a job. But what job did he offer her? Defence. the one thing she's always demonstrated, she has no interest in defence. She hates defence. She didn't want to give defence any of the funding. What does he do? He makes the ex-Minister of Defence, who criticised her, he's now Chancellor, and he's offered her Minister of Defence. And I thought there's no way she'll ever accept that. Yeah. And that's basically just a poke in the eye as you leave by the back door.
Yeah. As the door slammed behind you, hitting your backside. So that's a very good point. So what I didn't like about Lammy's exit statement, why did he have to put in the fact that he was the first deputy black prime minister of the Labour Party? What is the point of mentioning your colour, right, in relation to he had a good education, he's had a great run as a politician, right? He obviously would be feeling that I can do well going forward. I'm not an old man, you know. I've got an intellect. I've got everything. What the hell has his colour got to do with anything?
Well, because that's his shtick. You know, he and Diane Abbott, neither of whom you see in the room at the same time. This is their one basic stick, is DEI, right? He should have said, "I am the world's most successful DEI hire." That would have been the more accurate description of his role.
Now that is funny. I represent the DEI issue on this matter, and if you're offended at all in any way, could you send your complaints to Rafe, please? Yes. Now that is a very good point, but what is it about being black or brown or white? Supposing, on the same basis, Louise Haig should have said, "I am the first white politician to be convicted for fraud," right? Well,
I'm the first fraudster who's got this far.
Yes. Now that's the point. Right. It's been the privilege of my life to appear at bloody Preston Magistrates Court. I mean, it is. But what is it about colour? Which is it because that is their community? Actually, they actually feel at home, and I would understand that. Birds of a feather do stick together, right? So. What is it? Why did he think it was important for him? He got to the top not because of his colour. He got to the top because actually he had something to offer. I'm saying now I may be the first person to ever say that about Lammy, but I take that.
Well, yes, I think opinions may be varied on that particular interpretation. It was quite clear when your whole life has been based upon, you may ask yourself, why was it that he was able to win a scholarship to Harvard? That was what gave him the big starting career. Was it because he actually traded on his fact that he was an ethnic minority? So it could be that the single most important aspect to David Lammy's rise to power was his background and his DEI status. And so once you spent 30 years basically funneling things down one channel, it's very difficult to get yourself out of that. We also live, as I've always said, we live in a post-revolutionary society. The world around us looks the same. The institutions look the same. But the people who run them are cuckoos in the nest who bear no comparison to the generations who run them. And the people that run those institutions all subscribe to the new revolutionary dogma. This has been a top-down revolution, and it is about virtue signalling. It's about diversity as our greatest strength. Britain's always been multicultural. It's about intersectionality. It's about minorities. Minorities are now sacralized. So we have made minorities sacred. They have a higher status. They are the first among equals in our society, and so anything that you can do that reminds people of your sacralized status is basically a way to show that you are part of this privileged class.
Okay, well, the argument about that, we are such a mixed society that London is a very odd place, right?
One second, sorry for interrupting. Yeah. What percentage of people living in London, I won't call them Londoners, what percentage of people living in London are foreign born?
I would say, I am guessing by just looking at, obviously I travel on the tube every day, I walk around London. I would say, unbelievably, 55 to 60%.
All right, well, it's 40%.
Oh, is it?
Are foreign born. It doesn't mean that they're ethnic minorities.
Yeah.
So the white population when I was born was around 87% white British. Now it's around, in 2021 it was 37%. Now it's probably around 33%. So that's the first city in world history where the indigenous population have become a minority within the space of one generation.
Okay, and it depending on what your view is, it's going to get worse because if if people have relatives or stories or anecdotes from other countries, they say the place to get to, he said, because my cousin, he or she has gone there and it's all turned out to be rather good. It's certainly better than the shithole I live in. And so our country becomes more attractive to one area and less attractive to another. So I could see the South African whites all saying, I'm not going to London, it's worse than Johannesburg.
Well, it's already happening. So there's a form of migration that no one talks about, and that's internal migration within the UK. It's white flight, right? So why are property prices increasing in Cornwall and Devon? It's because all the white people are flooding out of London, they're flooding out of Birmingham, and they're going to the southwest. That's what's happening in our country. It's basically we're not being a United Kingdom. We're descending into a United Nations where everyone is basically siloing themselves in their own ethno-nationalist silos.
Yes, and that you'd expect that because you do that with this, right? I suspect you'd. I read The Guardian to argue against that position. It's just an intellectual trick. I listen to audio, which is not my thought process, because I want to hear what that argument is and think out my own arguments against it. But that means that London, if you closed your eyes today, Rafe, open them up, 10 years' time, what will London look like?
Well, you've heard of the golden banana, have you?
No.
So there's a golden banana you can draw in London. So if you live from essentially Richmond all the way to Hampstead, and you drew a banana through central London, those areas are still pretty much the way they've always been.
Oh, right.
And there's very low crime rates, and life carries on as normal. But it's when you go out to Tower Hamlets, when you go out to the suburbs, that you see the real change. So there are two Londons. I live within the golden banana. I've never seen any crime. I've never seen anyone robbed. I've never seen a phone stolen. I've never seen anything. So when people tell me all these horror stories, I think, well, that's not my reality, and I'm in central London all of the time. But it's definitely painful for people who have seen their community change. You know, I knew a lovely chap, Barry, and he retired about 10 years ago and went to Essex, and he said, I'm the only person on my street who is still white. I was born on this street, everyone I knew has gone away, and I was the only one that stayed, and it's all changed, and his whole community has gone.
Actually, that would make Pooch. Yeah. That would make a great piece of film. That I'm not saying that guy would give an interview, but that would be very interesting. So here we are. We have a new government.
But the other point I wanted to make about London is a city is the collective memory of its inhabitants.
Yeah.
And once you lose that collective memory, does London still remain London? If nobody on the street knows where Samuel Pepys was born, or where Charles Dickens or Dr. Johnson used to go and drink, if no one's heard of the Great Fire of London, if nobody knows what the word the Blitz means, is it still London? And I think then that's
yes, I definitely buy that in relation to the military and the Second World War. And I suspect that there are literally millions of people who can't quite understand why we talk about Winston Churchill, or we don't have many great figures in our lives, modern figures actually. And if I come from somewhere else. And the other thing that does make me laugh sometimes, I imagine I know it's incredible to think, but I am probably, in relation to most people, actually a liberal in this respect. But if you're running India, or you're running Bangladesh or Pakistan or something, there's no question that there's a whole load of white people all standing up demanding to be either Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, Prime Minister, or important political views coming from white people. Can you imagine you're in India? You see, in the surprise announcement, Michael Johnson has been made Prime Minister of India. Modi is very upset, but it's a minority of the white people in India, and they're going to do well. We want to encourage them. But over here, it's considered absolutely normal. And in fact, it's used as a kind of political battering ram for a career. You say, my parents came from, I don't know, Bangladesh or something, and I wish them well. But I don't wish the whole country well in that respect.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Of course, the reality is there's no flow of immigration going the other way, is there? But that puts the lie to this idea that we're constantly told that Britain is a racist country, that the West is racist. If it was racist, you wouldn't have vast numbers of people coming to this country. In fact, Britain, every year there's something called the World Values Survey, which looks at the most racist countries in the world. Britain is the world's third least racist country, behind only Brazil and Sweden. Most racist, India, large parts of Africa, Asia. This is where you're going to see
absolutely.
racism.
If you want to watch racism work, just be a Muslim in India, right? Just go there.
Or be black in China.
Yeah.
And
in places like Russia, they don't allow them in.
No. Even the EU had to admit the black experience in Britain is better than anywhere else in Europe. And I remember listening on Radio 4 with great glee to a black artist who moved to Berlin and moved back to London because of the racism
true?
he experienced in Berlin.
I loved Berlin. So I don't think I'd go. We have, as I said, we have a new government. They faced issues. I normally don't like William Hague's pieces in the Times. It normally starts off with some rather boring anecdote. When I was the leader of the Conservative Party, he drove the bloody thing into the ground, didn't he? He was a kind of forerunner of a Cameron disaster. We are skint, right? It's a significant problem. It's not just something for some rather small TV station to encourage its viewers. All right. What on earth, right? You're Prime Minister. You're part of the new government. What do you do about it?
Well, I scrap net zero for a start. Okay. That's the most important thing. I reduce employee national insurance contributions. I get rid of the over-taxation on business. There are lots of things that can be done. And let me just say also, in Andy Burnham's slight defence, I actually do believe we need a social care service. I think that's an area of life where there are so many people living with Alzheimer's and so forth that need care. But this is not the time to do it. We don't have the money now to fund a social care service. And he has to be very careful, because remember, this is what did in Theresa May. She would have won a majority in 2017, but she didn't.
How will that work? Tell me how the death tax works.
Oh, well, I don't know how the death tax is going to. I haven't looked into the death tax, but it certainly could be on the value of your property. Now, the Dilnot Commission came out with a report saying that you should be able to take £35,000 maximum out of your house. So if you have a property, £35,000 is the cap, and that will go to your social care. But anything above £35,000, the state will pay for. Theresa May adopted that, but didn't use any cap, and that's why she lost her majority at the election. Now, if this was Tony Blair in 1997, I think a social care service could have been implemented. The money was there. We were in good times, and now we'd be in a better position. I don't think this is the time when the roof is leaking to start dealing with these sorts of things.
Right, but
same thing with council houses.
Okay, correct. So there's an interesting thing about council house. He says, I'm going to deploy a significant amount of my political capital to push this thing through, right? He has the numbers to push it through. So what can stop him? Because after all the people on his side of the thing haven't got enough money to look after themselves, and they're worried that the nice house they've got, because they're now making 95 grand, and previously in their previous job was lucky to make 95 pence, some social worker from somewhere, right? How is it going to be stopped? They are going to push it through, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, the logical way to do it is to get all the skivers who are on benefits for anxiety, for tennis elbow, to stop those benefits. And we have such a bloated welfare thing. As you know, we spend more on welfare than we take in on income tax receipts at the moment. Unbelievably, people under 25 take more sick days than people over 50.
Right, there was a brilliant piece written in The Spectator last week by Michael Simmons. Michael Simmons is disabled himself, right? He's a great journo, right? He pointed out that things like multiple sclerosis and proper physical disabilities actually have basically batted a draw over 10 years. In that time, though, ADHD has gone up by 1,600%, right? It's a straightforward 101% racket. Now, right. And there's good money. I'm not saying it's great money. It's not a life anybody wants. But you can have these quotes, disabilities, and still go to work. I'm in favour of you going to work. I'm not in favour of you having some benefit from the state.
And look, I believe very strongly in the welfare state. I believe those people in this society who need help should be there. You know, I've always been a supporter of the welfare state, but we've got to a point now where we have people who aren't being tested on this. They basically just do an online consultation and they get it. It's based on trust. And I'm sorry, we're no longer in a high trust society. We cannot trust people. Also, like, yes, we will have money for social care if we get rid of all the scroungers and we have real stringent tests to make sure people are deserving of those benefits. Don't get BMWs or Mercedes or whatever they're getting as mobility cars. What happened to the old Robin Reliant? Remember those? And
we should certainly go and refurb them for them.
But also no benefits for someone who's not a citizen. You know, citizenship should bring benefits, quite literally. And the fact that you can come here and after 5 years of residency you qualify for benefits is outrageous. One good thing about having Shabana Mahmood remain as Home Secretary is that hopefully she will stick to the plan to deny the Boris wave, the greatest, the Boris wave was between 2021 and 2025, 4.8 million people came to this country, the majority from the third world. That was 7% of the population change in 3 years, the biggest population change in 1,000 years of our history. They will become eligible for benefits, which will potentially bankrupt the nation. The left-wing backbenchers don't want them to remain eligible after 5 years. Shabana Mahmood wants to increase that to 10 years. I say you should only get it if you become a British citizen, and it should be a 15-year residency requirement to become a citizen. If you did that, then you would have more money you could put onto social care. But right now, we're just doling things out to everybody.
Right, Rafe, thank you very much indeed. That has been... one final point. Look, he wants to build more council houses. I see down in Tunbridge Wells today, I read it somewhere, I think it was in the Times, that they've got no water, right? It's been hot, right? But have no water in the middle. Where are we? Not even in August yet. But the other reason they were putting it down to, this is South Eastern Water, of whom the chief executive is leaving and the chairman's already gone, is that the number of houses that have been built. Now, Burnham now says he's going to build more and more of the houses, and actually there is a demand from Rayner and the like to build spectacular houses. If we haven't got any water, why on earth are we doing any of this?
Yeah, and I think the infrastructure needs to be put down as well. And putting down the infrastructure for water for these places is very difficult.
And long-term.
And long-term supply sources, yeah. And actually, it's water companies that are the best test of how large our population really is, because we have so many illegal, unknown migrants over here that actually we can't believe the official data. And it's the utility companies that actually have a far better understanding. But if you want a quick fix, as I've said for 5 years now, empty all of the private accommodation of asylum seekers. Put them all into migrant camps. You know, after the Second World War, there were 250,000 Poles who couldn't go back to Poland because it was communist, they'd be imprisoned and so forth. Members of the army, but the elderly, daughters and sons, children and the infirm. And they were housed in 1950s style Nissan camps, huts. And they were there for 10, 15 years very happily. My mother's cousins amongst them. They fell in love, got married. They never complained about that. In 2026, are you telling me we can't build sufficient quality camps to house migrants? Not only will that be a deterrent to stop people coming over, because they know they're not going to go into a hotel, and even a one-star hotel here is the Ritz-Carlton if you're coming from Eritrea, you will free up tens of thousands of new places, which would be a huge boost to the council house policy. We have the infrastructure already there, but we're giving it to the wrong people.
With your views and your intellect, how much airtime are you given on mainstream media? I'm talking about the BBC and stuff like that.
Well, I used to be on the BBC all the time, and then I was cancelled about 6 years ago, and I stopped being on because I became more political. I used to just comment on monarchy. I was a ceremonial commentator. Okay, right. I did all of the great state occasions. But then, of course, I became much more involved in the things we've been discussing, and my appearances lessened. But then over the last 2 years, they've begun having me on again, which is very good.
Yes, I do think that the BBC have discovered that there is a good reason to have Rafe and others like you on, is because actually there is an audience, right? Because if you listen to some collection of lefty half-wits who've never made a penny in their life and don't know very much, but they do know we hate bosses and we're going to tax the hell out of them, right? Actually, people stop watching that stuff, right? And what has happened on Newsnight, for instance, which I do cop hold of occasionally, is that they do put on a reform stand, or somebody from the right who can actually say, well, actually, that's a load of cobblers, by the way. And that in itself creates a show. And in creating a show, it creates an audience. And so to have the Rafes on, and Pooch was praising you up, and I said, I've never heard of Rafe. I can't stand any more of this bloody ultra right-wing drivel. And actually, it turned out not to be that at all. So even people like me, right, live in a bubble where the left have so got into me that I'm not prepared to listen to anybody further right than I am.
I'm going to put that on my next cover of my book, Kelvin MacKenzie, this ultra right-wing drivel.
More. And if you want more...
Then Genghis Khan says, too conservative for me, yes.
Yeah. More ultra right-wing drivel is available tomorrow. Rafe, it's been very interesting. And so Pooch was right. I said, I don't know Rafe and da-da-da-da. It's been compelling stuff. I suspect that the audience feel the same way, because whenever I speak less, it always indicates that there is a rather larger intellect in the house. So I'd be very grateful if you come back.
Been very enjoyable.
And next time I'll send you, rather than me just jumping for something, I will send you some bullet points saying this is what we'd like to talk about. And
absolutely great.
That way you can have a good half hour with us.
And best of luck with the show.
Yeah. Well, I hope it. And best of luck with you. And I'm very pleased to see that the BBC have now discovered that there is an unserved audience. It's called anybody who's not a left-wing tosser, right? And therefore, ordinary people have, at least in people like you, hear a voice, an intellectual voice, which they say, he makes a good point.
But the real conversations happen here. This is the place.
Well, it will be. We hope so. Very good to see you, man. Okay, well, anyway, so Pooch was right. He has to be right once a year, and it's happened. It's happened in July. We're going to go for a break on the news, and then we're coming back with something probably less interesting than Rafe.
Morning. I'm Edward Hughes. The Knob of the North met with King Charles and was formally appointed. In his first speech outside 10 Downing Street, he pledged to end years of instability, deliver the biggest changes in the last 40 years, bring back hope, and focus on stable, responsible politics with a left-leaning agenda, emphasising working people, regeneration, and a circuit breaker moment for the country. What a load of bollocks. He quickly unveiled a new cabinet with a clear shift. John Healey as Chancellor, David Miliband as Foreign Secretary, Angela Rayner returning to Housing, Shabana Mahmood staying as Home Secretary, Wes Streeting as Defence Secretary, and Yvette Cooper in Health. Reports describe a purge of some Starmer allies, signalling a more leftward direction. Other headlines include the charging of a 28-year-old man, Joshua Kerry, with the murder of former MP Anne Widdecombe in what is called a targeted attack. Additional stories cover Kevin Keegan's death at 75, various crimes and incidents, and international notes like Ryan.
Yeah, hi. Kelvin MacKenzie. Well, that was great, wasn't it? And the interesting thing, just heard from the production guys, the interesting thing was that the audience stayed with Rafe for the hour. So next time what we'll do is I'll come in as a guest, and Rafe can be the presenter, and perhaps the audience might even rise.
We'd love to have Rafe do a show.
He would do a great show, but we don't want him to come on too often, because otherwise they get rid of me, and I need to actually pay rail fares and coffee and my car parking charges and still be vaguely worse off. So right now, keep that feeling going that the right has answers, but actually is not being allowed ever to express them. We've got Damien Pudner coming on. I'm going to ask Damien what he makes of all these spending plans when we actually haven't got any money. I mean, where I part company with Rafe is on this social. When you're hugely unwell and you're older, suddenly this has to be a bill not that is met by your family and not met by your assets. It's got to be met by people who have never seen you before. And that I read somewhere was going to cost 18 billion. Right? How is this possible? How can somebody just say, I'm going to spend 18 billion when we haven't got 18 pence? So Damien, nice to see you. Now, perhaps you should explain, not only are you an economist, but you're part of a collective. What is that collective called?
Yeah, so the Great British Think Tank was set up about 7-8 months ago. It's a small group of experts, including financiers, entrepreneurs, economists, experts in the field, basically, that are there to bring all the information into the public domain. So Joe Public can go to one place, our website, gbtt.info, and find everything on there that they need to know with the official data on the economy, and basically hold the politicians who are gaslighting you to account. So all the data is there. So go and take a look.
Okay, fine. So already we have started to see the Labour Party split. A guy gets fired yesterday. Immediately, the Prime Minister announces that or the Chancellor or whoever it was says VAT's reduced on this. It's 45 quid. You can be sure it's not 45 pound. It might be fourpence. And out comes the sacked minister and he says, actually, that's unfunded. Where's the money coming from? Where's the 1.8 billion? There seems to be a series of things which basically our new Prime Minister has indicated he wants to do. But honestly, Damien, isn't the truth about the matter, we haven't got the money? Why does he say these things?
Well, yeah, exactly. We don't have the money, and he can say all these things, and it's great PR for him, and it's great sound bites. At the end of the day, he's got to find the money, and the only way he's going to find the money, realistically, is to soak the rich. And that's, when I say the rich, I mean the middle classes now. It's not going to be the millionaires and billionaires. It's going to be those earning 35, 40, 45,000 a year. That's where the tax rises are going to hit, I believe. So the money is not there. He's got to find it from somewhere. We know he's not really going to touch welfare, and that's where the real savings are going to be. And he needs to stop gaslighting the public.
Okay,
get real, be honest.
Okay, let's go to the people that are actually going to be affected by change, right? So every time he says, I'm going to do something great for you, right? That's people who are on benefits, people who haven't saved for their pension, for the days when they can't wait to give up work. But actually
for the people who haven't contributed. Yeah.
So what is the kind of a range of pay where you think people will really be required to cough up? And the other aspect is, he said we're going to keep the effectively the triple lock on taxation. Okay, yeah. So how is he going to do this?
Well, this is it. I mean, how is he going to do it? We're all waiting to find out. I mean, it seems that he's found a new magic money tree from somewhere. I really don't know how he's going to do this without increasing taxes, as I say, on the middle classes, those earning 35 to 50,000 a year, maybe slightly more. There's no other way he is going to do it, since he has said he's not going to get rid of the triple lock, which is insane. We need to get rid of the triple lock. We need to cut welfare. Now, you asked me last week to come up with some concrete numbers, and I went away and I ran all the figures and I had a look. So just for your audience, the government is going to spend 334 billion on welfare this year, a quarter of all government spending on welfare. Admittedly, 146 billion of that is the state pension. Okay. Yeah. Now, you can argue about that one way or the other. Now, what I am proposing, if I was the Shadow Chancellor, or if indeed the Chancellor, savings of around 57, 58 billion by the end of this Parliament. So that's about 17% on the current welfare bill. Okay. How do you do that? Well, 23 billion we can get from reform of the disability and the PIP incapacity benefits. Okay. Then we can get another 15 billion, I reckon, from replacing the pension triple lock with an earnings link and some means testing. And I don't think that's going to be too controversial. Then we can get another 20 billion, okay, from freezing non-disability working age benefits for 3 years, strengthening the requirements to get support, another 7 billion from reforming housing support, and then, of course, there's some fraud, probably 3 or 4 billion from reducing fraud and overpayments, errors, all that kind of thing. So I would use that 57, 58 billion of savings from the welfare bill, and I would put it into tax cuts, and three major tax cuts. So the first would be to cut national insurance, employers' national insurance, from 15 to 13%. That's about 19 billion euro cost. Secondly, I would cut the basic rate of income tax from 20% to 18%. That's about another 16, 17 billion a year cost. And then I would actually cut corporation tax from 25% to 20% over 3 years, and that's about another 20 billion cost. So we're going to move the costs that were currently going wasted on welfare and give it tax cuts, and then hopefully that will generate the productivity and the growth that this country needs to get out of the bind that we're in.
Okay, so to do that kind of, that would be considered quite revolutionary. I mean, it would probably lead to people, charging down the high street. So, is it possible to do that unless you've got a Labour type majority of the right? Okay, when I looked at the drill down of the latest polling showing how people will vote, I keep on going on about this. It worried the life out of me. A mixture of Greens, Lib Dem, and Labour actually would form a coalition ahead of a reform reform Tory restore in a small way. This is what worries me. What worries me is 29 more than it worries me in 26 and 3 years of this madman.
Well, you're right. I mean, the reality is that that's possibly what could happen in 29. And what will happen then is that we continue down this route of this managed decline of the economy because nobody's prepared to make the difficult decisions. As I say, politicians of all colours have to get real with the public. We cannot afford to continue down the road that we've been going for the last 10, 20 years. And if we want to put the finances back on a sustainable path, then whether it's Reform, Tories, Labour, the Greens, Lib Dems, whoever, we need to get real and make serious changes to how we have done things economically over the last 20 years. Otherwise, we're going to be in this situation again in 2029, in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 30 years' time, and it's going to be our children and our grandchildren that are going to be paying for it all.
Yeah, right. So we, as I understand it, we've virtually had no growth since 2008.
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty anemic, below 1%. Yeah.
Okay, so that's 20 years of people not feeling better off, okay? Yeah. Which is an enormous, I mean, that has never happened before. So literally decades of people basically treading water. I find that incredible. And actually, as I understand our economic position, our debt is going up. And therefore, we can never resolve any of this. All we're heading towards is a problem. At some stage, somebody else is going to come in and they're going to say, oh, we'll do everything Damien does and we'll double it, right? Okay, we will be Greece. We will wake up one day, unemployment will have to go up through the damn roof, and taxes will have to go up as well, and welfare will have to go down.
That's right. I mean, national debt is nearly around 100% of GDP, so about 3 trillion pounds. Okay, 3,000 billion pounds of debt, and the interest on that is taking up 10% of government spending. It's around 110 billion a year, and the only way you're going to reduce that is increase your tax take or reduce your spending. And the best way to increase your tax take is not by putting wealth taxes on people or mansion tax or putting your council tax up. It's by generating more growth. So we need these supply side policies that are going to generate more growth, get the productivity up, use technology, use AI, get your energy costs down so that companies can make more money and pay their staff more, get the tax rate, get the tax take up. And that's how you bring down your debt. Otherwise, you're right. It's going to carry on going up. We'll go from 100% of GDP to 150% to 200% of GDP. And you can imagine the interest cost on that. And what position are we going to be in then? The Prime Minister at some point is going to have to turn around, and the Chancellor, and say, well, your taxes have to go up by 15, 20, 30% just to pay the debt interest. I mean, if they don't grasp the nettle now, the problem is not going away. It's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Damien, on that cheerful note, we'll see you next week with more fun and frivolity. It's a difficult area. And for ordinary people, I suspect, actually, we don't really want to talk about all this. We want to do this, that, and the other. If it doesn't affect them, it will definitely affect their children or, or their grandchildren. There is stuff going on in the workplace for 18 to 25-year-olds or 16 to 24-year-olds, which is catastrophic in my view. And unless we create wealth, we are causing a problem for youngsters. And that seems unreasonable and not only unreasonable.
It's immoral. It's
immoral and politically, right, impossible. You cannot sentence young people to having a poorer life than their parents and grandparents.
Kelvin, there'll be a revolution. If it carries on, there will be a revolution, and it's not going to be a good one.
Okay, Damien Padno. I'll speak to you next week anyway, Damien.
Cheers, mate.
Good to talk to you. And just say one more time how people can get to really what's happening in the economy. Where do they go?
So look at our website, gbtt.info, and on X, because we have a good following on X, at Great British TT. Thank you.
Lovely. All right, Damien. Good
Cheers,
to speak
mate.
to you. Speak to you next week. Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.
Right. Well, by public demand, Pooch is back. Now, Pooch has had an incredible life, which the stories are either he is actually making them all up, which actually would be a good thing, actually, because it makes compelling television. But so first of all, he's got his dad who's so violent that they have various punch-ups, which has led to to Pooch looking as though he's been run over by an army truck, right? And secondly, then the most incredible aspect of it all is that he ended up fighting as the only white guy for an Aborigine tribe against other Aborigine tribes while living in Australia. Now, that kind of story normally ends up as a Netflix documentary, and Pooch is hoping that does happen. And actually, I'd watch it. I can tell you this. So, as part of the Pooch travels around the world, Pooch is back by public demand to talk about other things that have happened to him in his life. So you wonder how UK Live started. Well, when you hear these stories, he'd probably be better off if he just ran those rather than this live TV. So tell me, Pooch, you're now fighting for the Aborigines, right? Are you a winner, or are they knocking you out as well?
I did all right because they were just fighting, I was boxing.
Right.
Luckily, I'd spent 6 months in New Zealand, as I said, training with these very good boxers who were way better than me. But that gave me an enormous level of fitness. So yeah, I did all right. I did all right. It was a lot of fun. It ended,
Did you become friends with them?
It ended, there was no animosity at all. Anyone who's boxed knows that you might go into a ring, you see it all the time. I'm going to beat you up, I'm going to blah, 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 I'm going to kill your children. They hug each other afterwards. There's an enormous amount of respect, any combat sports. So yeah, you'd have a bout and then we'd all have a laugh afterwards. Everyone sat round, we ate the kangaroo that had been shot and cooked.
What is kangaroo like?
Bit like crocodile.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Bit like horse.
A bit like horse. What do you mean? Basically inedible?
No, it's not. It's really good, actually. Kangaroo steak's a really lean, good steak that's good for you.
Okay.
So that's good. Yeah.
What about alcohol? Because the stories that I hear around the Aborigine people is that they have a weakness in relation to alcohol. They don't need, as distinct from my brother and Mike Graham, they don't need to have much alcohol in order to not feel too well.
It was told to me as an enzyme lacking in their liver, so they don't metabolize alcohol in the same way. So what happens is you get the Aboriginals around the towns who are kind of drink quite a bit, but where I was, this didn't have any alcohol. I was a bit shocked. It was lots of tribes, they have a reservation, not in a kind of pejorative sense, but it's where a community will live, and they don't have any alcohol. They maintain their traditions, which are amazing, and their culture. So yeah, I found it fascinating. I felt so at home in the outback, Kelvin. I felt free at night, the sky, the stars. I love astronomy, looking up at the stars. Yeah, it was great, and it was great to see this culture, the people, and I made some good friends.
And those friendships exist today, or
Yeah, well, I've sent pictures and stuff like that. I know if I went into went back, the same people would be there. So, but yeah, did that. Came back, didn't get the novel published, so I needed to get a job. I started because I'd been on building sites, so I started property developing, and I was developing a house. I then learnt the skills. I can plaster, I can bricklay, I can rewire a house. I learnt all of those things.
oh right, okay.
Opposite was a lady who worked for ITV, and I went in and fixed their radiator. They just saw we were in the street, and she said, "Oh, would you do a screen test?" I said, "What for?" So I ended up being the on-screen TV builder on GB Good Morning Britain. So I'd sit next to Andrew Castle, and they'd say, "Oh, we've got this thing." So I'd do a little VT, how to do this job, how to do that job, and then that got me into being on-screen TV builder. I was on 60-minute makeover loads. And then I had kind of my own show called The Renovation Game, which was a lot of fun. But actually, I talk about this quite a bit. I knew it wouldn't really go anywhere.
How long did you do that for?
3 or 4 years.
Did you?
Did one with Linda Barker as well. But I'm always fascinated, and you and I have spoken about this, when people are at the top of their game on TV and they think it's going to last forever. And I'm looking at that thinking, do you know what? What would my offshoots be? If I was at the top of my, let's say I was the top TV builder, let's say I was, what's that guy, Tommy from, nice lad. I would be thinking about what products can I brand? What can I do when this all goes pop, which it will. Anyway, so I set up a website called The Building Sheriff, which I knew how to price jobs, and I knew the biggest problem you have when someone walks into your house, you don't know what a job should cost. Right, I need that ceiling plastered.
Yeah.
How much did that cost? Yeah. Well, they could say 400 quid. You don't know.
You're correct.
They could say 30
correct.
Quid.
That would still be true today for me.
Well, yes. So I set myself and a mate. We set this website up. Well, it just exploded. Through advertising, we made a lot of money through it, and it was so informative. It was fun. So that went really well. And on the back of that, I then was able to finance some other bits and pieces I did. Started doing some TV production. No disrespect to producers here. I say TV production was invented so stupid people can have work, because...
Now that is a very, very good point, because the reality of it all is that all the effort is actually in the screen. That the camera does a lot of the work, because you could put anybody on the screen. I mean, I prove it, but actually... So if you see a piece written in a book or printed or something in which there's been a row, and at the end of it, a spokesman for Southwark Council refused to comment, right? Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
If, however, you have a camera on the spokesman walking down the stairs and then going like that, refusing to comment like that is a guilt. Right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
it means so much more than the printed word.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that when I worked, so you talked about Glastonbury, I ran one of the stages for the BBC, the outside broadcast at Glastonbury. There's hundreds of people on a bloody jolly.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at all of this work thinking, that's costing me as well, not that I'm a licensed fee payer, but that's costing someone, that's costing someone. And what I mean is when I've gone to these broadcast networks, they're employing so many people, just each of them presses one button. Whereas here, we've got Scarlett and Luke doing the job of 10 people probably. And so it's no disrespect to the people who actually do the job.
Yeah.
It's broadcast companies who have too large a cost base. Yeah. So what we want to try and do here is make this work by having a smaller cost base.
Let me ask you about that though. In the world that we're going into, ITV laying off people by the thousand, okay, BBC doing much the same. aren't they heading towards this environment anyway?
No, because I wouldn't employ them because they want too much money, because they're used to earning £400 a day pressing one button, whereas when they come to UK Live, I want them to vision mix and to do the comments and to adjust the cameras like Luke has just done.
Yeah.
And then Scarlett's just gone out to make some tea, as well as letting Esther McVeigh in
Yeah.
and doing. And I think people would begrudge that, whereas I'd much rather get young, hungry people who want to get into the industry and prepared to learn a system away. I've got a way of doing things that might be the wrong way, might be the right way, but it works, and I want people to learn that.
Yes, look,
So you can't teach an old dog new tricks, Kelvin.
Is that true?
That is true.
I certainly wouldn't hire. I don't want to be unkind because half of my relatives work in it, but you don't want to hire people from the BBC.
No.
They have an. It's a bit like hiring somebody from the council. You know, they have an attitude.
Yep.
They have a resentment. They have a thought process. Well, that's fine, but the reality out there is completely different.
And you said it with the yesterday when you said that start your own business, charge less than the minimum wage,
Yeah.
but make up your money by working 7 days a week, 15 hours a day. Now, that's what we've all done. Anyone who's started a business and been self-employed, you're thinking about it 24/7. I wake up at 2 in the morning and thinking, right, you know, what's going to happen tomorrow and what are we doing, and strategizing. And I've never been employed. I've never had a job from doing that work. I was selling.
How long ago were you on Good Morning Britain then?
This was about 15 years ago, but then I pitched an idea to the BBC that I wanted to make a TV show of the old blues guy, Leadbelly. He wrote House of the Rising Sun, and I said, he's an amazing figure, and I said, let's do a documentary on him, and they said no, and I was so pissed off that I thought, sod it. I hired the Albert Hall, literally on a whim. Hired the Albert Hall. I got Van Morrison, Jules Holland. I got Eric Burden from the Animals over.
Each of them to do a Leadbelly?
Yeah, we did Leadbelly Fest.
Yeah.
And it just
Sold out?
It sold out.
Okay, tell me about that. Tell me about that. Those one-off promotions. It's expensive to hire the Albert Hall, though, isn't it?
Yeah, the production's expensive.
Yeah.
Again, so you can either, with a lot of these things, you can wet hire or dry hire,
Yeah.
four-wall it. If you four-wall it, you bring your own people in.
Yeah.
And that's fine. So I can bring my production crew in. It's cheaper. So the Albert Hall's like 20 grand to hire, which isn't too bad. But then you've got all the other costs. Yeah. The problem is when you go to America. So I then put Leadbelly Fest on at Carnegie Hall, because Leadbelly's last ever concert was at Carnegie Hall in 1949. Good. And a guy who had played that concert, Tom Paley, was still alive in 2016, and I got him to play at the gig like 67 years later. But the problem is, it's a union place. So you go in, and I've got my crew. My electricians have to plug things in and out whilst the union guy stands there. So every person I bring in, they have to have a union guy standing there. So it doubles your costs. And then the stage will go dark between 1 and 2 p.m. Literally goes dark when they go for lunch, and we're not allowed to do anything. So I found that really hard. Yes, I made a profit, but not nearly as much as I would have made had the union guys not been there.
Let me ask you about
ultimately, that cost 100 grand, let's say.
Okay, let me ask you about this. So I decided to hire the Albert Hall.
Yep.
Just for whatever. What do you have to set the ticket prices at? Because most of the cost is work. You can work it out. Okay. What would you have to set those ticket prices at? 80, 90, 100, 200, 300?
But because it's the Albert Hall, probably between 50 and 120. And the funny thing in the kind of music business, promotion business, is the expensive seats always sell first. Always sell first. So you look at which artists. I've got a gig coming up at Cadogan Hall on the 16th of October. We did it last year, tribute to Ronnie Lane from Faces and Small Faces.
Does it sell out?
Yep, did last year. And I've got a super huge A-lister, I can't say at the moment, coming on board. This one, I'm doing it for the fun of it. You can get a ticket for £17.50. Top ticket's £45. I'll still make enough money on it.
That's no money.
There's still decent profit in it if you
Is
sell
there
out.
really?
Yeah. You know, you can make 30 grand profit
Really?
one night, which is okay.
Yeah.
You know, but it's the expensive seats always sell out first, which is amazing. But it shows, and just generally economically, and you look at restaurants and stuff like that. You said in Weybridge,
Yeah.
the restaurants are, you know, they're going gangbusters.
Well, a certain kind of restaurant.
That's
I.e. the food round my way. There's a place called Enos, which is Italian, and it's just started. The thing has sold out every single night from the day it started. It literally started 2 months ago. It's amazing. So every night of the week, any lunchtime, it's completely rammed. Why? It's got decent food. Yeah, you might not consider it cheap. I thought it was okay myself. Other people have got a different view. But this, I tip my hat to them. They actually made pasta, which tasted of pasta, and didn't feel as though it'd been manufactured in, I don't know, out of Mongolia and been shipped here 12 years ago.
But your average person, someone who's on a pension, someone who is genuinely unemployed, someone who's genuinely disabled, they can't afford to go to places like that.
That's always been the case.
It's always been the case. But I would say, Kelvin, when I was younger, I could afford to go to restaurants all the time.
Yeah.
My children can't afford to go to nice restaurants.
Right. Well, you're unusual. I never went to restaurants.
My dad was in the business, so I kind of had that thing, you know.
I never went to restaurants. And in fact, the only time we ever went to one, I was astonished by it. Oh, this is how it all works, is it? I think I would have gone to one restaurant in the first 20 years of my life.
Oh, no, this wasn't as... we were in restaurants all the time because my dad worked in them. I'm saying when I was in my 20s, I would take a girlfriend to a restaurant, and I just know that, you know...
I thought you were gay.
Well, I'd help out in a rush. Kelvin, seriously, I just think that the price of it... Look at the price of going to a pub. You want to buy, you know... last time I went to a pub in Claygate, glass of wine for my wife and a pint of Guinness, 16 quid.
That is correct.
2 drinks, 30 quid. I'm not paying that because there's no value in it.
Yeah, no, look, I get that. So I don't drink. So if I go to a pub, I have to buy, and with my brother, I have to buy him a large Malbec, which cheers him up, because I have a pint of iced water, and I feel I can't go into a pub and say a pint of iced water. They said, please go somewhere else, right? So that large glass will be somewhere around 12 to 13, 14 pounds.
Yes.
Which is incredible, because I know for certain that the quality of that Malbec, you buy a whole bottle for a £5 down, or £5.50 at Aldi's.
And all the youngsters now, they do what's called pre-drinking. They pre-drink at home because they get some beers from Sainsbury's or Tesco because they can't afford. Where we used to go to the pub all the time, but
that is true. That has been a change.
Quickie,
but I'm not going to start weeping for the skin and the dim and the children. They have got to get on with it. They've got to find work. This is our problem. We have got to make sure we create work in our country.
And that's the problem, though, Kelvin. There isn't enough work for young people. My son's 23, zoology degree. He can't even get a job as a washer-upper. He's applied for everything. He applies for jobs in vets, just helping out. It is terrible. Ultimately, I mean, where do you go? You just bang your head against a brick wall. And I feel, you asked me this morning, why do we do this? Why my wife says, oh, why do you get so uptight about all these things? And you say the same thing. We get uptight because there's right and there's wrong, and this situation is wrong. And when the young people in your country cannot find work and cannot do a decent day's work for a decent day's pay and have that sense of self-worth, there's something wrong. Right.
So what I see is an explosion in people starting their own businesses. There is no alternative. And then what they'll be doing, as I keep on it, I bore Pooch with this idea, is that they won't be defined by minimum pay. When you start your own business, you'll work the hours in return for whatever the invoice, what you can charge for it. So you could work all week, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and actually that person might pay you £220. If you work that out as minimum pay, you'd be under minimum pay by about, I don't know, probably 30 or 40%. So you might be working for £9 an hour, but at least you've got work and you are in charge of your life. Now, so that's my advice to you. Go into painting and
100%.
Decorating, go into anything. Anyway,
100%.
Final story from you, Pooch.
No, guest here, don't you? Do you want to?
Well, who is the guest? I don't even know who the guest is.
Nigel Pawley.
Nigel Pawley. Nigel Pawley from the papers. He loves his music. You have a word with him,
Okay, fine. And I've just been told who my guest is. This is one of the joys of the collaborative feeling.
Nigel was a late call-up, so he's done us a favour by coming in late.
Oh, has he? Okay, well done. Okay, right. Thank you very much indeed, Pooch. You're always interesting. I'm sure that the audience will have gone down because of Rafe leaving. And so we're going to pay people on the basis of which audience they bring in. And Rafe is now going to receive 10 grand and Pooch is going to pay me £37.40. Okay. Yeah. Morning, Nigel.
Morning, Kelvin. How are you?
How are you, man?
How much do I owe you, or do you owe me money? I can't remember how we
Well, we're about to find out. This would be a very funny idea, wouldn't it? And what we should have on screen.
Pay to be funny.
No, but what would be funny is if when you're on, watching the audience either going down or up, and depending on the basis of whether you get paid or not. Well, of course, here you don't get paid no matter what happens, so it doesn't matter. But that would be quite an interesting thing to tell the audience, wouldn't it? That actually,
I think it'd be like the gladiators. You know, you get the thumb up or the thumb down, whether you're going to succeed or not. But you know,
Okay.
you get to an age, Kelvin, where it wouldn't matter to me, to be honest. So you know, I could bring it on. Vote me on or vote me off.
Oh, right. Now, what I didn't know, Nigel, I didn't know you from your Fleet Street days, as far as I know.
I did have lunch with you once, but it was in the Sun canteen. I was doing something on the Bazaar column at the time. But
Oh, were you? Okay.
You had other matters to worry about than
Yes.
than a nervous
Well,
person.
mainly, the main thing I had to worry about is whether I was going to get fired or not. There was a
I
constant.
was worrying about that as well when I sat down to lunch with you.
Yeah. You were hoping. You weren't so much hoping. Worry. So
right.
tell me, so you worry about the fact that the news coverage is too partial, not wide enough.
What I worry about, I went in like Piers Morgan and most journalists. I went in 18 and did a full year course at Harlow. I was sponsored by a local paper, the Hunts Post here, the Sharman Group. Did a couple of years training, went on to an evening paper, went on to a bigger paper, and finally I was offered a couple of weeks' work in Fleet Street that lasted for 30 years on the Mirror Group and the Express papers and various other people casual. And we were ingrained in getting both sides of the story, but also actually getting a story. Now, this might not just take about 10 minutes. This could take quite a while. You know, I remember meeting people from the Sunday Mirror, I think, the News of the World, when I was a trainee, and they'd come up and spend 4 days in Kettering trying to get a story about a traffic warden who was playing away. You know, people might not say that was a real story, but they actually had journalists out of the office getting stories.
Yeah.
And towards the end, I think newspapers have lost confidence in themselves, their abilities to tell a story. And social media started this, and 24-hour news channels. And suddenly, rather than breaking stories and having the BBC saying, "We have learned," which meant they'd read the Sun or read the Telegraph to get their stories, newspapers were reacting to try and get things out as quickly as possible to cope with and compete with social media, which doesn't work for newspapers. People want to buy a newspaper not to get the World Cup result or what the game was. They want some analysis the next day. They want added value. And the added value of newspapers now is gone, because what trainees do now and what journalists in Fleet Street do, the 6 of them who work for newspapers, go through Twitter, get a story saying, you know, Doris in Halifax is a little bit upset about something she sees on television, and suddenly it's, you know, Ian Wright it should be fired, he's a useless, you know, pundit or whatever. And this is treated as some sort of fact. There is no response, there is no explanation, there is no actually getting a quote to find out if it's true or not. It's taken as fact. So random people on Twitter, good for them as citizens, journalists, but not for, you know, reading the Sun or people reading the Mirror or heaven forbid the Express. You know, are just basically rehashing Twitter stuff from random people. That to me isn't a story. Politics is not covered as an analysis of what is that. What does Burnham putting in someone as a minister mean? What does Tuchel mean? Why did he pick that person on that? What is happening to Marcus Rashford? Everything now is all on speculation. Someone's speculating, being a pundit rather than actually being a reporter, not being involved in the story, not being an activist, but actually being a reporter, just floating above, watching things and observing and reporting it. That's the sort of journalism I like.
Right, so that's a very good point. Now, this is one of the problems, though. There is the commercial problem of the fact that employing journalists at all is enormously expensive. And actually, the revenues which used to exist through advertising simply aren't there anymore. I mean, it's a catastrophe for the game. We've gone through a revolution. It's an industrial revolution. The way we're dealing with opinion and stuff like that is an industrial revolution, and money is collapsing. So I have friends in the well, actually, if I talk about relatives, I have relatives and friends, all of whom are basically heading to the door of their current jobs. They're either being invited to leave or they're going to leave themselves. There is no money for them. And so I was told the other day that some journo was now driving a Amazon truck. Another person I know, actually give him absolute credit, he is quitting, hasn't worked with the BBC. He's quitting to become a teacher, right? He's in his early 50s, right?
I can understand that. Because
I can understand it, and I actually praise them.
Yeah, when I did casual work at the Mirror many years ago, 30 years ago, it was like £100 a day, or just over 100 or 115. When I left Fleet Street a few years ago, the casuals then were getting £100 a day. It hadn't gone up at all. Starting salaries were down to about £20,000 in Fleet Street,
Correct,
as opposed to previously. But the thing is, I worked for Richard Desmond. I was his personal scribe for a year. I had to travel around meetings with Boris Johnson. What's he doing meeting Boris Johnson and going on a swing? What are they doing? We found out later they were carving up the Docklands, but obviously I didn't report that. His big thing was, you lot cost me money. Sainsbury's and Lidl paid for adverts. And I rather probably foolishly said that no one brought a newspaper to read a Sainsbury's advert on the front page, which could have gone either way, but he found it quite amusing. It's all very well, journalists cost money, but the money that journalism, when it was in its heyday, just as digital stuff was coming in, I was at the Mirror when it went digital first, and that was that's when I decided to get out. As soon as you hear digital first, you know that you want to be out the door. So, they didn't invest, they didn't trust journalism. They immediately started putting loads and loads of money into digital stuff to try and chase the Mail Online or the Guardian or BBC, which, were using our money to basically build a digital empire and kill off local papers and local radio stations. So they didn't have confidence. They started cutting journalism. The Mail was the only paper that kept having confidence in its journalists and still had journalism, still had proper journalism. But even that now is getting rid of, read this week, they're getting rid of various people. And they've lost confidence, and they've lost, as you say, the money and the income. And now it's too late. When we used to catch trains into work, everyone was reading a paper. We used to sell them. There used to be a coffee store. We used to buy the newspapers at the station. Well, that's gone now. It's been replaced by a franchise thing. You don't see anyone reading a paper on the train now. Well, unless it's a vagrant who's just been sleeping on it. No one has a paper. They're all on their phones. And that's where news comes from. And if you give news away, which you have to do, people don't like paying for news. They don't mind paying for a paper. Although £5 for the Sunday Times, come on. £3, I think, is for the Mirror. Who wants to pay that amount of money for a newspaper? But on digital stuff, when you actually read your phone, people expect to get it for nothing. And that's not of good value for a newspaper, is it? It's not good business, which is why journalists are now driving Amazon trucks.
Yes, well, I do agree with you about the Sunday Times. I mean, they decided. I mean, I get everything on that. I pay my subscription, and it's a good way, if you're in my game, to learn about what's going on, and I consider it reasonable value. However, if I went skin, I would just call it a day. I mean, I wouldn't entertain paying for it twice. So, the Sunday Times put up their costs from £4.50 to a £5. Now, so that's a 12% hike or 30% hike, right? That is huge. I'd say 13% is a lot. You know what? They don't want to produce.
No,
they do not want to produce the printed word.
I mean,
so they don't care.
I think I'd rather, because basically the only thing I really like in the Sunday Times is the Jeremy Clarkson column. To be honest, there's a few other things in there, but less and less. I might as well just subscribe to Jeremy Clarkson and say, look, I'll give you some money to read your column this week, rather than go for the rigmarole or going down to the paper shop and buying it for a £5.
But that is what's going to happen. That is what's going to happen.
The Substacks. This is the thing.
yeah.
People producing their own.
Yeah. So, for instance, I could do it. But do you know what the incredible aspect of that is? If you go on AI, now this was done, a mate of mine's a surveyor. He uses AI in his business. He says, look, go on AI. He said, I'll go on AI. He said, write a column in the way that Kelvin MacKenzie would write it. Okay. He wrote, anyway, 25 seconds later, up it comes about immigration. Up it comes. That was me. Yeah. They had got me, certainly the first couple of paragraphs, got me absolutely 100%. That was enormously worrying. Anyway, look, thank you very much indeed, Nigel, for coming on.
Not a problem, Kelvin.
Nigel came on.
And keep it going.
Okay, Nigel came on at a moment's notice. That was very kind of him to do so, and talking about the good old days, in which I must say that the sales of the Sun would rise immediately there was any good journalism, and the good journalism normally involved somebody quite famous making love to somebody to whom they weren't married. That seemed to cheer up the audience no end, and there was a rush to buy this stuff. And of course, immediately you discover that, then that's the only stuff you ever wrote about. And I remember Murdoch saying to me one day, is there anything going on there in the UK that doesn't happen below the belt? Anyway, thank you, Rupert. Now, don't mention me. Thanks a lot. I've just got to go and buy Tasmania. I'll call you later. Right, now, cheer us all up for the last few minutes of the show. We have Sean Walsh coming on. He's a writer and a satirist. And he wants to talk about Burnham's homelessness pledge. I don't know a lot about the homeless, to be honest with you, Sean. Are you in favour of it or are you against it?
Well, I ought to say, hello, Kelvin, by the way.
Hello.
I ought to say that I normally write on things to do with artificial intelligence and religion and politics, but I have been writing about homelessness for a while because I was actually a rough sleeper and homeless in a hostel for about 2 years.
Seriously?
So it's something which 2015 to 2017.
How did that happen?
It happened because I was in active alcoholism.
Right.
And I therefore managed, to my great shame, to drink myself and my then 6-year-old son, who was living with me, into homelessness. So he had to go and stay with the wider family. And I was, in the first instance, rough sleeping in Somerset and Wiltshire, so Bath, Trowbridge, Warminster. Finally found my way to Salisbury, where I started to get well again in a wonderful Christian homeless charity called Elaborate, which does absolutely fantastic work. So it's something I'm still involved with as a volunteer and something which I write about occasionally, but not that often, because for me, when I do write about it, I tend to romanticize my experiences a bit, and I'm wary of that. Burnham, okay, what can we say about that? He's including us all in this ridiculous midlife crisis he's having. So top of his wish list of things he wants to do but won't, for some reason, is rough sleeping. The good news is he's only willing to spend a few £100 million on it, apparently. And I say good news because this is not a problem that can be solved just by throwing money at it. The problem of rough sleeping is a collection of problems, all of which are mixed together and all of which are downstream from other problems. So amongst rough sleepers, you have people like me who put themselves there through addiction. You have people who are mentally ill through no fault of their own. You have the people we all know about, which is homeless veterans, some of whom want to be on the street, some of whom don't, and some of them just don't want to engage with the system that's treated them so craply, if I can put it like that. And now, of course, we have a new cohort of rough sleepers who are there voluntarily, which are basically immigrant criminal gangs. So there is no one solution fits all to that problem. So whilst I am glad that Burnham is putting this front and centre, I suspect that this is all meretricious.
Right. So why? Look, I don't see a lot of homelessness. I must be honest with you. Except when I get divorced, I seem to be with that. I seem to have handed my home to somebody.
I'm guessing that's not quite
Who
the
I-
same thing.
Yeah, who I haven't gotten very well with. It's that old Tom Doherty gag, isn't it? A divorce would be cheaper just to hand your house to somebody you don't like.
Yeah.
But on the question of, I don't see a lot of homelessness, and I don't hang around in the homeless community, and I haven't got your backstory. Okay, I haven't got your backstory, and I do enjoy the way that you carved up the kinds of people you're going to meet. When you were lying on the streets of Trowbridge or Salisbury or something like that, I presume, did you have any money, any benefits at all? Did you actually have cash?
I was I was committing petty crime a lot of the time. When I first became homeless, I mean, this is how sick I was, Kelvin. My then 6-year-old son was driven away from me to go and stay with the wider family by a social worker. He didn't know what was going on. My first thought was, good, I can go to the pub and have another drink, even though I had nowhere to stay that night. That's how bad a state I was, and I am ashamed of that still.
How do you get on with your son now?
He's in the other room, hoping none of his friends are watching this.
Okay, how old is your boy now then? How old is your boy?
He turned 17 in September.
Oh, right, okay, all right. And you have a good relationship, you guys?
Absolutely fantastic.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear that, man.
But not down to me. I mean, I got lucky. I was committing crimes, petty crimes, street robberies. I was with some very, very bad people. I have, to the extent that I can, made all sorts of amends there as part of my addiction recovery anyway. There are some people I can't make amends to because some of the people I was homeless with didn't make it. Initially, I was bilking hotels and bed and breakfasts. I've been back to those places and made restitution to the extent that I can. And most people have been fine with me about that. I had a little bit of benefits money still coming in. But I was doing some pretty bad stuff and living an extremely bad life. But I found that charity, and started to get better very gradually in probably the second half of 2016, and in 2017 worked my way through the system. But that was 10 years ago. Now, even 10 years ago, it was impossible for homeless charities to do the job that they want to do without interacting with local authorities and local government. And that, I think, is more of a problem now, because I suspect that the issue around illegal immigration is stopping people from here transitioning away from being a rough sleeper into being someone who's hostel homeless and then getting onto housing lists. I think there's been some interference in that process. I've tried. It's very difficult to get figures from local government about what's going on. It's very difficult to even get figures from homeless charities now about the extent to which their old work is having to be recalibrated because of the illegal immigration problem. So I think the system now is probably in a far worse state than it was when I was going through it.
Can I understand that then, Sean? The point you're making is that there isn't the capacity to deal with indigenous homelessness, probably because, not unreasonably, the influx of migration has meant that all the capacity has been soaked up. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's true. But I also want to say I don't think it's entirely a government problem or a government issue. I think the churches don't do enough. I'm someone who, when I was, as you put it, lying on the street in Trowbridge, I would have people step over me to go into church. And I think religious organisations could do more. I think we all could do more, actually. I mean, even I now will sometimes walk past a homeless person and not register them. And I should know better. I'm not kumbaya about this. I understand the grammar and language of being homeless. I know there's a lot of people out there pretending to be homeless who aren't. And I know that in my case...
No, can I address that, Sean? Can I address that?
Yeah.
How do you mean pretending to be homeless, but they aren't?
Oh,
what do you mean by that?
I know people who are sofa surfing or are in halfway houses or in hostels who will go out and beg. And I can find them out very quickly because I just go and talk to them, and I know there are certain key phrases that you can. It's like being in the mafia, you know. Well, not quite like being in the mafia. It's not quite as bad as that. But there are certain key phrases that you can use. There are certain ways of being. There are certain types of speech. There's certain slang involved, and I can just tell. And all right, if someone looks like a Dale Vince, for example, you can be pretty sure they're genuinely homeless. But a lot of them are just trying it on. I mean, I'd say I live in Devizes in Wiltshire now. I would say that probably we have about 12 to 15 genuine rough sleepers here, which is too many for a small town. But we also have some people pretending to be. I know that.
That
And that's not
is
government's
there
fault.
money? Is there money? Is there money to be made out of begging? I mean, I don't give to street beggars, but I mean, you know about this world. Can you earn a living by people giving you stuff?
I remember I was briefly in a hostel in Bath in December 2015 in the run up to Christmas, and there were some people there who had rooms for the night who said that, well, let's go out and go to work. And they went out just before Christmas, just begging. And they made hundreds of pounds between them. So, yes.
Actually, Pooch raises a point here, which is one that I'm often puzzled about. The big issue. Is that a good idea? In one sense, I suppose, actually selling something, but I don't see too many people ever buying the big issue. Perhaps they do.
No, they do. My issue with the big issue is that it turns into a job for people. So you see the same person selling the big issue for about
Correct.
4 or 5 years in one place,
Correct.
and you think
Correct.
maybe it's not doing its work. What's good about the big issue is is interaction. I think what homeless people need is some form of interaction, whether that's just buying them a sandwich or just asking them where they're from or asking them what their name is. I have a different view about giving them money, having been there. Sometimes people who are rough sleeping and in addiction need money to get a fix or get a drink. That's just straightforwardly the case. But I understand why people take a different view. When you buy a copy of The Big Issue from someone, assuming that they are genuine homeless and in need of that gig, then for a while you are in the same moral space as them, and I think that's a good thing. There's a kind of level playing field there, which is a good thing about commerce in general, isn't it?
Okay. Well, one final question to you.
Sure.
What was the moment that you knew I can't carry on being a homeless drunk? I have obligations to my family and my son, and I have obligations to my own life.
Yeah. It wasn't a moment. It was probably a period of about 3 or 4 weeks. It was before I got into the Elaborate Hostel in Salisbury. I was rough sleeping in the Sainsbury's car park there, and found my way, because it was a warm space, into, I'm not supposed to say it, but I'll say it, into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in Salisbury, and heard people whose stories were at least as bad as mine, being able to tell stories of recovery and with laughter. And I think gradually it came to me that there was a different way of life available. So probably then. I got lucky, Kelvin. A lot of people don't. And I take no credit for the fact that now I write for a living and I do okay. But that's not down to me. That's down to Providence and the fact that I got a fantastic boy who who's been put through too much, but luckily has come out of it okay.
Great story that. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Sean. We'll talk again,
Thanks,
I'm
Kelvin.
sure. Cheers, Sean.
Nice to see you
Great
again.
to speak to you. Cheers, man. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate.
Well,
Bye.
there we are, an uplifting story. Literally detached from his son through his drinking and his general reaction to life. Recovered. They now live together again, and so there is hope out there for us all. Okay, I'm just nipping out for a drink now. No, that is not true. That is not true, by the way. That is not true. I don't drink. But okay, got some super chats. Super chats. Let's have a look at these. I've been given 10 quid from Simon Kilford. Now, I think Simon gave me another 10 quid.
Simon does every day. He's our biggest super chat donor, so big shout out.
Oh, right. Well done, Simon, and I hope you're not voting Labour. Now, this comes from, I can hardly see it, but it says here, Kelvin Varma. Been here for 30 years. London is truly awful now. Oh, my God. Okay, well, let's hope it's not that bad. Great show this morning, it says, from John Marquet. Marco. John Marco. John, thank you very much indeed. £2 always welcome.
Another tenner from Simon.
Another tenner from Simon. I tell you what, Simon, I think I'm a bit concerned about Simon. He does exist, I hope. Yes. That would be funny, wouldn't it? Now, that would be great. There's a bloke there pretending to be Simon Kilford, right? And Simon Kilford, who occasionally comes in here, finds out he's gone skint because of all the money gone to UK Live. Thank you very much. And we've got another tenner here from
Meester Hastings.
Meester Hastings, promotion of my wildlife channel, and be nice to a fox. Nice. Well, that's all right for a tenner. I'll be nice to Pooch. Got a super chat here. Got a £5. Morning, Kelvin. Love the show. Would you be able to have a watch if a movie coming out in September called Uprising, unlike the Nolan? It looks epic. Oh, really? What's that? Uprising? Who's in that? I don't know anything about it. We'll give it another plug. We'll give it another plug. Thank you very much indeed. And those are all the super chats. Very good to have them. Because it's a nice thing to be nice. Okay, right. Well, that's it. That was a great start to the show. So I was completely wrong, and Pooch currently was right. He has to be right once a year. So look forward. I won't see you tomorrow. I'm moving house tomorrow. So I'll see you Thursday.
And no World Cup.
And also no World Cup, actually, which is a joy to us all. Mark Littlewood is recovering in a darkened room. Thank you very much indeed.